Welcome to the Cardboard Crash Course. My name's Ethan, and today we're learning how to play the mostly scientifically accurate Ark Nova. This is a zoo building game for 1 to 4 players, and we're going to go through the setup as well as how to play the game. If you need to skip this setup, go ahead and skip using the timestamps below. Without further ado, let's head on in. First things first for setup, we'll place the massive game board in the center of the table. Then we'll take the break token, the one that looks like a little coffee mug, and place it in the spot labeled for the amount of players that we have. We're setting up for a 2-player game today, but it would be 3 or 4 if those were the player counts. We'll shuffle the 9 bonus tiles and add 4 of them randomly to the open slots on the bonus track. We'll put the other 5 back in the box as we won't need them for the rest of this game, and go ahead and leave the bonus tile printed icons alone for the game as they're always the same. This icon is alluding to the deck, so we'll shuffle the entire zoo deck and add it right on top. Then we'll put 1 card from the deck face down in each of the 6 display spots, and place the organizers included with the game next to the game board for ease of use. Place the association board next to the game board, leaving enough space for cards above and below it. We'll place 1 partner zoo of each continent and 1 university of each type onto the association board. Next, we'll take the base conservation project cards and place them next to the association board, dealing 3 out to the bottom of the board. We would deal 4 instead in a 4-player game. In a 2-player game like we're setting up today, we'll block spots from these cards and on the association board to make them unavailable this game. Finally, for global setup, shuffle the final scoring cards and also place them next to the association board. With global setup complete, we're ready for personal setup. Each player will take a random Map A zoo map and place it in front of them. The remainder of the maps are placed into the game box. As instructed by Map A, we'll place an empty size 3 enclosure and a kiosk on these spaces. Each player takes 1 set of action cards consisting of build, cards, animals, association, and sponsors. They'll take the animals card and place it under the leftmost slot under their player board, and then randomly distribute the rest of them under the other 4 slots. We'll select a player color and then take the 3 counters of that color, placing 1 on the reputation and conservation tracks. Then, as the first player, we'll place ours on the 0 space of the appeal track. The second player will place theirs on the 1 space, and so on. Take 7 of your player markers and place them each on the leftmost spaces of your player board, leaving the rest off the game board for later use. Then 3 of your workers will lay face down on the right spots designated for them, and 1, being the active worker, will stand straight up on the notepad. You'll also take 25 money and add it to the notepad for your starting total. We'll then randomly draw 2 final scoring cards. We're allowed to look at them, but keep them secret from other players, and next to your game board. We'll then draw 8 starting zoo cards, choosing 4 of them to keep and 4 of them to discard to the board, leaving them in a hand next to our board. And then finally, we'll turn the 6 cards of the display face up. Final setup for 2 players will look something exactly like this. This game does not have specific phases or rounds. Instead, it's simply a back and forth, turn by turn, between the 2 players in this game. A single turn at a time is taken back and forth until the end game is triggered. Periodically, this is broken up by things called breaks, in which it'll be a soft reset of your hand and resources. But until that occurs, a simple action on one of these action cards will be all you do on your turn. Here's how you take a turn using your action cards. On your turn, you'll choose any of these cards, looking at what slot they're in currently, 1 through 5. You'll then use that value to perform the action. All of these cards will reference where they were on the track. So in the case of cards, it'll tell you to look at this table and draw then discard that many cards depending on the value. Then after performing that action, you'll take the card out of the row, move all of the lower ones to the right one, and then place that card in the leftmost slot. You'll then pass the turn to the other player and wait for your turn again. The easiest way to understand all the elements of this game, including the cards, your player board, your actions, and the global board, is to simply run through the actions and see how they work, starting with the cards action. Unlike regular gameplay where each of these cards would be constantly played at differing power levels, I'm going to go through each of these actions as if they were performed at power level 3. When we choose the cards action, regardless of the power level, we'll always start by breaking 2. Take the break token and advance it 2 spaces along the break track. We have 2 options, either drawing from the deck or snapping. Unfortunately, since we're at power level 3, we can't snap, since this says we can only snap at power level 5. I'll still explain it in a moment though. We only have the option to draw and then discard. So at power level 3, we draw 2 cards from the general deck and add them to our hand, and then we discard one card from our hand into the discard pile. If we were to have been able to snap, snapping means taking any one card from the display regardless of where it is, and adding that card to our hand instead of drawing cards from the deck. Cards are always replenished into the display at the end of your turn. All action cards in the game can be upgraded to the side 2 in order to upgrade its ability if you meet its requirements. We'll talk about meeting its requirements in just a little bit, but if we upgrade to the side 2 of the cards action, we'll still break 2, and the table will be improved. It'll also allow us to draw cards within reputation range or from the deck, instead of just from the deck. My reputation range is these 3 cards in the display, because my association marker is up to this stage of the association track. That means that alongside cards from the deck, I can freely choose these 3 cards to draw while drawing using the table from the display. An upgraded cards action card also allows you to snap and take any card from the display starting at power level 3 and not just 5. In addition to the upgrade from the card, upgrading your card's action is the only way to allow your association level to grow above 9. Moving on to the build action card, this allows us to build one building with a maximum size of our power level. We'll pay 2 money per space that it encompasses. All possible standard building sizes are shown here. These are standard enclosures, the possible petting zoo, of which you can only have one of in your entire zoo, pavilions, and kiosks. Right now our power level is 3, so we can only build a building that covers 3 spaces. This will cost us 6 money to build. We'll pay the 6 money from our supply and place this adjacent to any buildings already within our zoo. If it's the first building placed, it can instead be placed along any corner. We cannot place into rocks or water, but some animals need habitats that are adjacent to rocks or water. Because we covered up this bonus spot underneath, we can take that bonus immediately. You can only ever build on those adjacent spaces, and you can never extend buildings outside of your zoo map. Enclosures are needed in order to house animals used during the animal action, whereas pavilions here immediately increase your appeal by 1 while they're built. Kiosks cannot be placed within 3 spaces of another kiosk, so you need at least 2 spaces between them. Kiosks, however, will grant you more money while you and the other players take a break. Upgrading the build card allows you to build 1 or more different buildings with a maximum total size of the power level of the action card, instead of just 1 single building. Keep in mind this must be different buildings. You cannot build 2 of the same. Also, on top of the already mentioned petting zoo special enclosure, we also have the new large bird aviary and the reptile house special enclosures. When you build either of these special enclosures, you may immediately move animals into these special enclosures as you build them. This will be explained more on the animals card. Also, after upgrading into the Stage 2 build action, you gain access to build into any of these slots with the Stage 2 symbol on them. As of the upgrade, you can now build anywhere in your zoo. And for any reason, if you ever cover every space in your zoo available to build, you immediately gain 7 appeal. Next is the Animals action. This allows you to simply play animal cards from your hand. You compare the power level of the card to the table shown below, and because we have a current power level of 3, we can only play 1 animal card. This makes it so the Animals action is actually pretty much useless at power level of 1 while it's on the Stage 1 side. We'll look at the anatomy of the zoo card for this long build vulture in order to fully understand what kind of cards with it we're playing. Up in the top left and left of the card is all of the requirements in order to play this card. So we need an enclosure type of at least 4 spaces large, or 1 enclosure of this special type, which is the large bird aviary. In any instance, we need to be close to at least 1 rock. Below that is the cost in order to play this card, so we need to pay 20 money. We also have the type of partner university required in order to play this card, so we need at least 1 of these science icons. Up here in the top right is the type of animal that it is, referenced by many other types of cards, and the continent which it originates from. The cost to play the card is decreased by 3 by each partner university we have of that continent. On the bottom right, we have the bonuses shown when we play this card, so we'll gain 5 appeal, 1 conservation, and 1 reputation point each. Finally, many animals have effects when they're played, so just go ahead and read the card whenever you play, and it'll be pretty self-explanatory. There also may be a blue box at the bottom. This is only for solo play and can be ignored when playing with more than one player. Looking at the wolf card, we'll learn how to play a card. So he costs 12 money, decreased by the amount of partner universities we have of this blue type. He'll need to be housed in an enclosure of at least 4 hexes large. So looking at the board, we have one partner university of that type decreasing his cost down to 9. So once we pay the 9 money, we'll have to look at our zoo board and look for an enclosure that's currently closed, unoccupied, that's at least 4 hexes large. So I'll flip this over to its occupied space in order to house the wolves. We'll then gain 4 appeal by playing the wolf card, and he also says to gain an extra appeal for each predator icon already in our zoo. That's the entirety of playing this card, and after that we'll place this wolf card next to our zoo to show that we played it. Petting zoo animals and special enclosure animals are, well, special. Petting zoo animals can only be placed inside of a petting zoo, whereas special enclosure animals may be placed either in a normal enclosure of this size or a special enclosure. When placed inside of their special enclosures, they take up as much space as they show on the card. This means that instead of occupying a normal enclosure, like this wolf one that we just did, we'll instead take up one space, like this goat shows in his special petting zoo enclosure, by placing one of our cubes in that space. This petting zoo can hold up to 3 different petting zoo animals, instead of just one single animal like a normal enclosure could. When we upgrade the Animals action card, we can not only play animals from our hand, but we can also play them from within the reputation range on the display. This works very similar to the Cards action. So here my reputation is currently 8. I can play animal cards from any of these 4 cards, meaning this cheetah and this sun bear here, as well as cards from my hand. The only difference is I'll have to pay extra costs equal to the folder number. So this 3 is added to 16, making this sun bear cost 19 from the display. Also, this just generally increases the power of the table down here, allowing me to play multiple animal cards one at a time instead of just a single one using lower numbers, and also allows me to increase my reputation by 1 every time that I use the power level 5 animal action. Finally, some animals will have this symbol, which means that I can only play them once my animal card is upgraded to level 2. The next action card we'll talk about is Association. To do this, you perform one association task with a maximum value of the power level of this card on the association board. We need at least one active worker in order to do an association task. When we do so, take it off of its sheet and then place it onto the association board in any of the available spots. Because our power level was 3, we can only play it to the 3 or 2 space here, but I'll explain all of them really shortly. For the first time we do an association task, we only need to use one active worker, but if we wanted to do that same task a second time before a break, we would have to use 2 active workers in order to activate it a second time. This reminder is shown up here at the top. The first association task is to increase your reputation by 2. Just as explained while playing animal cards, we'll just move this marker up 2 spaces. The second association task is to gain a partner zoo. We would take any partner zoo that we'd like and add it to our board. We add it to the lowermost slot on our partner zoo track. If we were to cover any bonus icons, as shown in yellow here, we would immediately perform this. The next association task is to gain a partner university. In the same way that we got a partner zoo, we would be able to take this and add it to the lowermost slot on our partner university track. In the same way, we'd also take the bonus if we immediately covered it. On top of that, you'll also get a bonus amount of reputation equal to the amount on the partner university. In this instance, I'd immediately gain 2 reputation points. The final association task is conservation project work. When you do this, you can either support one of the conservations already in play on the bottom track here, or you can play a conservation project directly from your hand into the leftmost slot up on the top of the board and immediately score that instead. To score a conservation project, like this Predators one, you'll look at any of the available slots that are looking for a certain requirement as listed on the card. So this Predator says you need to have at least that many Predator icons in your zoo. If you had at least 2, you could claim this slot, and if you had at least 5, you could claim either one, but only if they're empty. To do so, you take one of these cubes that we put down at the start of setup from the left side of your game board. If you take a cube from the left side in any of these slots, you immediately gain the bonus. But if you take a cube from any of these 4 top slots, you immediately gain the bonus and gain it again every time you take a break. You would take that cube and place it in the slot that you fulfilled. Doing so immediately grants you the bonus directly under that slot. Moving our conservation efforts 2 slots would move this token this many spaces. Upgrading the association action card allows you to perform 1 or more different association tasks with a maximum total of the power level of the card, instead of just 1 association task at a time. So if the power level of my card was 5, I could play this to the 3 and to the 2 section at the same time, as long as I had the amount of active workers available to use. In addition to this, I also unlock the ability to make a donation. To do this, I would take one of my cubes from the supply and add it to the lowest most value on the money slots. I immediately pay that much money and gain that much conservation. So I would pay 2 money here in order to gain 1 conservation. If someone else does the same, they then add theirs to the lowest most slot and have to pay more. In addition, I can also play conservation project cards from within my reputational range on the display alongside the cards in my hand. Finally, upgrading my association cards allows me to have 4 partner zoos at a time instead of just 2. The final action to take is sponsors. When you play the sponsors action, you can play 1 sponsors card with a maximum level of that power level from your hand. Or you can break that power level in order to gain that much money. So if my power level is 3, I can either pay up to a level 3 sponsor card from my hand, or I can break 3 times, advancing the break marker 3 spaces and gaining 3 money. Sponsor cards, of course, have a power level shown in the top left corner, of which you must be at least that much in order to perform the action and play this sponsor card. They may also have specific requirements they need inside of your zoo in order to perform that sponsor card. Any sponsor cards with this blue background and blue dot next to their texts is a recurring effect that you play next to your play area and then continue to gain the bonus of. Where any sponsor card with the purple background is an immediate effect. You'll gain that much of whatever bonus it's telling you to gain and then discard the card. Finally, any sponsor card with any brown ability is the amount of points that it gets you towards the end of the game. This icon also shows that. Upgrading the Sponsors action card allows you to play 1 or more sponsor cards instead of just 1, and with a maximum total level of that much power plus 1 from your hand or from within your reputation range. So not just from your hand, but also explained just like the animal or the conservation cards you can play from the display. In addition to this, the breaking also gets you twice as much money. So if you were to break for 3, you would gain 6 money immediately. On top of that, upgrading the sponsors card also allows you to play cards with this icon on the left side. There is a 6th option on your turn instead of just playing any of these 5 cards. Using any of the actions, remove it from the row and shift them down as normal, but you do not play that specific action. Instead, gain one of these X tokens and place it near your game board. If you already have 5 X markers, you cannot gain any more. Gaining these tokens is always a great thing to do if you don't know what else to do, because on your turn, when you select one of your action cards to perform its action, you can increase the power level that that card looks at by spending any amount of X tokens. So if I were to perform this build action and then spend 2 X tokens, it would look for a maximum total size of 5 instead of 3. Now it's finally time to talk about what happens when a break is performed. Whenever any player advances the break token to this last spot on the break track, the player that advances it will gain 1 X token, and then all players will carry out these 1 through 6 steps in order. First, you'll discard your hand down to 3 cards. It'll be instead 5 cards if you own this university. Then, if you have any multiplier, constriction, or venom cards on your action cards, return them to the supply. They no longer have any effect. Next is replenishing the association board. We'll take any of the used workers off of the association board and place them face up active back on our notepad, and then we'll replenish any universities and partner zoos back into their corresponding spaces. Then we'll shift the display, removing the bottom 2 cards with the folders labeled 1 and 2, shifting all of the cards up 1 slot, and then filling the displays on folder 5 and 6 from the top of the deck. Then finally, we'll collect income. Income will come from the appeal of your zoo. In this case, it would be 19 because I'm adjacent to it. Then kiosks within your zoo will check for adjacent occupied standard enclosures, pavilions, special enclosures, and each unique building adjacent to it. For each one, you'll gain 1 money. Then you'll complete any effects or gain any income adjacent to any of these icons. Finally, return the break token to the same space that we placed it during setup. Finally, after explaining all the actions and how to take a break, we're ready for endgame scoring and how to trigger it. The game ends, as shown here, if both of your conservation and appeal markers are in the same scoring area, or if either one has passed each other. When the game ends during a break, each player will take one extra turn. If the game end instead triggers at the end of your turn, each other player will take one extra turn, and you won't get a last one. First, before counting points, gain any conservation or appeal points from any of your final scoring cards. However, if no players had crossed this 10-point conservation marker, you instead have to discard one of your final scoring cards before doing this. Finally, it's time to tally victory points looking at the two past markers here. We'll find our target number by looking at the lowest appeal number that this conservation track is adjacent to, so being 82 here. And then we'll subtract that target number from the actual appeal that we had, being 84. So subtracting 82 from 84 gives us 2 victory points to end the game. The player with the most amount of victory points wins the game. If both players are tied, which may actually happen, the player with the most amount of funded conservations is the new winner. If both players are still tied, just go ahead and share the victory and have fun. This video is sponsored by my patrons, so if you want to help out and you like this way of clear and concise rules explanation, go into the description below to help us out. And if you enjoyed or didn't enjoy Ark Nova, let me know in the comments below, and any house rules that you may have as well. Happy gaming and have a great rest of your day.